allowed Utah to go on a 34-14 run. Thankfully, they were able to hold on and get the win. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not perfect, but this team is doing a lot of the things that you want to see them do the right way. And when you play the right way and you attack and have the mindset that they do, you're going to create opportunities for yourself. You're going to put yourself in a good position. You're going to crank up the pressure. And with that, you're going to find ways to get easy buckets. And I'm going to continue to drill this point home because I've been talking about it for years. But in the NBA, because of the way teams travel, the way they're on the road, the way they're back and forth and here and there, not a lot of practice time. They have shoot arounds, but they don't have time to really tighten up on things. You're not going to have your best stuff on most nights, meaning you're not going to shoot a high percentage. You're not always going to get the threes to go down. You're going to have some miscues. So the question is, how do you find ways to win games on nights, the majority of them, when you don't have your best stuff? Well, you have to do it through manufacturing points. You do it through pressure defense to create turnovers. You do it by pushing the pace to get easy buckets, sometimes off opponent makes. You push the tempo. And when you play like that, you're going to find ways to manufacture points to get over in those spots where you don't have your best stuff. And we've seen that now on back-to-back nights in L.A. against the Lakers, in Utah against the Jazz. And I mentioned this before. I know a lot of people are like, well, it's Utah. Who cares? They're not very good. All I know is going into the game, Portland lifetime with games played in Utah in the regular season, a combined record of 25-70. Think about that. Think about how long Utah's been around, how long the Blazers have been around. 25 regular season wins. That's not very many. So when you go into Utah, when you're the Blazers, and you can find a way to scratch out a win, it's a quality road win. And that's good. And it's always better to learn from your issues, your mistakes, or your miscues in a win. So I'm very thrilled with the group. The other encouraging sign coming out of the Utah game was Shaedon Sharpe finally begun to find that shooting touch. He was 4 of 8 from downtown. He looked comfortable. He had that stretch in the second quarter where he put up multiple threes and nailed them. One was a heat check from way deep. And, like we thought with him, he's getting to his spots. He's getting the looks in most situations that he wants. They just weren't falling. Well, they started to fall in Utah. That's a very encouraging sign. Also, Drew Holiday, the guy's a super stud. He was great in Utah. He was big in L.A., and you can just tell by the way the coach talks about him that, he's thrilled to have him on the squad. Drew Holiday is a difference maker, but they're getting, solid play from Drew Holiday. Shaedon Sharpe starting to step it up. Jeremy Grant has been sensational off the bench, and he's been doing a good job of attacking the painted area. Donovan Clingan has been solid. Denny Avdia has been their best player, and they continue to get, very good defense and energy from Tamani Kamara. And then off the bench, Matisse Thybulle, Blake Wesley had a couple of big plays in that Utah game. Chris Murray's been effective. They're just getting a lot of different guys to step up. They're killing teams with numbers because they have a deep and very talented and athletic roster. So I'm excited. You should be excited. This is a fun team to watch. They're much better, and they're going to be incredibly competitive throughout the year, which is great. And the other good news is they don't even have Scoot Henderson. Wait until he's able to get back in the lineup. Even Caleb Love able to come in and knock down some big shots. Blake Wesley's got arms that continue on forever. So I just like the versatility of this team, and I like what I'm seeing so far. Duop Reef able to come in and make a serious impact in the first half in that Utah game. So it's good. I like it, and I really am enjoying the calm demeanor of Tiago Splitter. Very matter of fact. So guys appear to be responding to him. They've got some good leadership on this team, but most importantly, they're playing basketball the right way. Now, the Nuggets, tough opponent. Very tough. And the Blazers have some tough games coming up at home between the Nuggets, the Thunder, the Lakers. But the Blazers, this is another good test for them at home. But the Nuggets did a great job during the offseason of, retooling their roster and adding some guys to the bench. So now they have a more legitimate second unit. They're going to be tested inside. Obviously, Jokic is tough. The Nuggets can knock down shots. Jamal Murray's a beast. It's going to be a big-time game. And I'm excited about it. But most importantly, just thrilled at the way this team is playing, the way they're competing. And you can see the connection between these guys. They put in a lot of work during the offseason, and it has appeared to pay off. So big game tonight. I can't wait. Love the way this team is competing right now. And based on your reaction, when you reach out to me, I can tell you're seeing the same thing. So big props to the Trailblazers and the way they've kicked off this year. 3-2. and 2-1 on the 3-game road trip as they come back home for 3 games against 3 contenders in the Western Conference with the Nuggets, the Lakers, and the Thunder. You can reach out to me on X at Chad and Rip City. You can call the show at 503-248-0620. A couple of games in the NFL that I really do like. The Houston Texans. They're going to be hosting the Denver Broncos this weekend. The Broncos have won 5 consecutive games, which is awesome. They're coming off a big home win over the Cowboys where they put up 44 points. But I like the Texans to defeat the Broncos in H-Town this weekend. And part of that reason why is that if you look at the Texans, in the games where they've struggled against teams that have the best pressure rate in the NFL. Teams like Seattle, and Denver's got the best pressure rate in the NFL. They sack the quarterback at an alarming rate. They're on pace to set the all-time mark and surpass the 84 Bears for the most sacks in a season in NFL history. But the problem now for Denver is Patrick Surtain, who is the reigning defensive player of the year, best cornerback in the league, he's going to miss a few games because of a pectoral strain. Never strained a pec. I don't think I want to strain a pec, but he's out. And so you've got to wonder now with Denver, how's that going to change in terms of what they do defensively? They play man coverage more than 50% of the time, which is more than any team in the NFL. My guess is with Chris Abrams-Drain coming into the lineup, they're going to have to play a little bit more zone, which means it's going to change up how they bring pressure at the quarterback. And C.J. Stroud has proven that if he's got time and he's not under constant duress, he can be a very productive quarterback. Their offensive line is garbage, but last week against San Francisco, they couldn't get home. Texans did a good job of mixing it up, and he finished the game 30 of 39. So the way I see this game is the Texans are going to be able to take advantage of some of the matchups without Surtain on the field. And the bottom line is with the Broncos offense right now, they looked phenomenal in the fourth quarter against the Giants and that entire game against Dallas, but Dallas's defense is the worst in the NFL. You can score on Dallas. But the problem is Houston's got one of the best defenses in the league. So I would imagine, even though it's painful for me to say this, that you're going to see a regression for the Broncos offense coming off the Dallas game, meaning Bo Nix will have some issues. The Broncos won't be able to move the football at will. They're going to have to run the football enough to be able to keep the pass rush from the Texans off of Bo Nix. And I see the Texans winning a close game. So I like Houston over Denver this weekend. The other game I love are the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're back home, once again, a home underdog. They were a home underdog last week against the Packers, and they got beat. But this is a good situation. The Colts have been one of the best teams in the NFL thus far. But this is a Mike Tomlin spot once again. He is, Mike Tomlin, 24-12-2 against the spread in games following a surrender of 35 or more points, which we saw last week against Green Bay, including a perfect 9-0 against the spread at home after a loss. So I love the Pittsburgh Steelers to bounce back and get the victory at home. Also, keep in mind the Colts have some injuries in the secondary, and they struggle to cover tight ends, and the Steelers are running 2 tight end sets more than any team in the NFL with Aaron Rodgers. So I think the Steelers find a way to get right after the loss to the Packers, and the Colts on fire and playing terrific football, but this is a different situation on the road against the Steelers, and I like Pittsburgh to get over at home. And there you have it. That's how I see that. All right? So a lot of big games in the NFL this weekend and college football, and we're in the prime time spot of the year. And I think I do like the Seahawks against the Commanders. Not as much as I do Houston or Pittsburgh, but I think the Seahawks will continue to roll. And you're catching Washington at a good time right now. Jaden Daniels not 100%. They've got defensive issues. They've got injury concerns. It could be a good time for Seattle to continue to keep this wave of solid play going. Like their defense, like the pressure they provide with the front four. And Sam Darnold is playing very productive football for the Seahawks. All right, we'll keep things rolling. A couple of different things. If you missed my conversation with Michael Franzese, former crime boss in the New York Colombo crime family, you're going to hear that next. He kind of deals with the situation surrounding the NBA, Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, how athletes are easy targets for the mob. He'll cover all of that, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. All right, let's get the party started, all right? Big game for the Blazers tonight, big football weekend coming up, and I'm glad to be with you. You've got the Rip City Drive. Chad Doing here on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Our next guest is a former boss of the New York Colombo crime family, also a best-selling author and a motivational speaker. Be sure to check out his YouTube page, which is sensational, and his website, michaelfranzese.com. Michael, thank you for your time. It is great to have you on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, my friend. Appreciate it.
Well, after the news surrounding Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier popped last week, Michael, I think many people around the country very surprised to hear that the organized crime families were still active. We haven't heard much since John Gotti. Are they still active? And if so, why haven't we heard much about them, about organized crime in the news?
Well, they certainly are still active, and I've told people this, they're not going away in my lifetime, that's for sure. And, what's really happened is they've gotten smart. After all the damage that the racketeering statute did back in the mid-'80s and 90s, and, of course, the attraction or all the attention, I should say, that whole Gotti saga brought on, people realize you just can't survive like that. We got to be low-key. We got to be what, our life was built on, and that is omerta, silence, staying undercover. And that's what they've been doing. And, so they're not going away. And I guess this was kind of a wake-up call to everybody to let them see that they are still around and still active.
I know you were recruited by the NCAA and all the other major sports leagues to speak with the athletes on the dangers of gambling and organized crime. How many years have you been doing that?
I've been doing it since 96. They actually recruited me when I was finishing up a 10-year prison sentence. We did a video where I explained, the dangers of gambling, how we would trap athletes, and so on and so forth. I was originally approached by Major League Baseball and the NBA and the NFL. And then that led to me speaking to all the teams over a period of years, still do that to a degree. And then the NCAA jumped on board in 98. And ever since then, I've spoken, probably 300 universities to all the student athletes over the years. And I think we put a good program together.
Yeah, I think your program's terrific. So I'm curious, when you talk to the athletes, especially those who are in college, how many of them hit you up privately or off the record to express that they have a gambling problem or some type of issue they're in? Is it widespread?
This is the sad thing, and I really mean this. I always tell them when I finish up my talk, I say, listen, I don't answer to the NCAA or to the coaches here. I'm my own guy. If you got a gambling problem or you know somebody that does, email me. You don't have to give me your right name or anything like that. If I can help you, I'll help you. This is a very sad statistic. By the time I get back to my hotel room, I have emails from the students that were at that seminar. And a lot of them are struggling, and look, I believe it's only going to get worse. I've been warning the leagues or advising the leagues now for years. The more access that you have to gambling, the more people that are going to gamble, and the more you're going to see people having problems, especially in the world of sports where these athletes are so competitive and it's an adrenaline rush for them to gamble. I've seen it all my life, and unfortunately there was a point in time when I took advantage of that also with them.
Yeah, so what is your basic message to the athletes? Does it say, hey, look, don't get involved? Like, what's the overall basic message you're trying to get to them?
You got to really speak to them hard. You can't soft stroke anything. And I tell them, don't be a sucker. Don't let anybody take advantage of you. Gambling is an addictive, vice, unfortunately. It's like drugs. It's like alcohol. If it gets into your system and you have that, personality characteristic, you could get hooked. And once you get hooked, it becomes a real problem. Because in gambling, you always think, oh, you know what? I can make up for it. I can chase the next bet. The next team is going to win it for me. The next card game is going to win it for me. And it just goes on and on and on. And that's how people get in trouble. And it's easy to take advantage of them, when they get into that kind of a problem. So I tell them straight out, the best thing to do, don't jeopardize your career. Don't let anybody make a sucker out of you. Anybody comes to you, they want to give you something for free. They want to pal around with you. They want, they're kind of, just really trying to get close to you for no reason at all. You might think it's your celebrity because you're a sports figure, but, they may have something else in mind. And it only takes one to put you in a jackpot. So, and then I give them some experiences in my past and tell them, look, this is how we set you guys up. If you want this to happen, you know what I normally do? When we do a football team, I'll get the biggest guy, the biggest lineman, 300, 350 pounds, and I tell the coach, line them up in front, right in front. I want them in the front of me. And at some point during them, I'll go to one of them and I'll say, look, I want you to stand up. And they'll look at me and the other players will look at them and I say, stand up. What are you afraid of? You're 3 times my size. Stand up. And he'll get up and I'll say, listen, I wouldn't mess with you on the field. You would tear me up. I said, but you step over this line, you come into my world, and I'm going to make a sissy out of you and every one of you in this room. I'm not impressed with your athletic ability or anything else. You come into my world, you're going to lose. And it has an impression on them because these young people, you have to be impressionable with them, or they think they got the world by, that they don't have anything to worry about, that they're invincible.
All right. We're talking with Michael Franzese, former boss in the New York Colombo crime family here on the Rip City Drive. So maybe you can help us, walk us through the process of how you were able to take advantage of the athletes. From what I was told, and I could be wrong, but, the bookmakers who are on the street, from my understanding, they needed backing of, a crime family because they would take, bets on credit. So they needed the backing with the money, but also for, collection, right? Because they need to go and collect their bets. So how would you utilize those situations if you had an athlete that was in deep with a bookmaker? How could you take advantage of that as a crime boss to be able to get something that you need?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, you're right. We wouldn't allow a bookmaker to operate on his own. Any bookmaker that can handle a decent bet is somehow going to be affiliated with us because, number one, we wouldn't let them operate alone. And number two, again, they need collection people behind them because they give credit, and sometimes they need to be financed. So they want to be with us. And I'll set up a scenario, and I've been talking about this, but this is fairly common. I had about 11, 12 bookmakers that worked under me, in Long Island and Brooklyn, where I was stationed at that time. And, I'd have a bookmaker come to me and say, hey, so-and-so from the Jets or the Mets, he's into me for $50,000. Should I cut him off? I'm saying, why would you cut him off? All you're doing is writing an entry on a piece of paper. It's not costing you anything. I said, let him get into you for $250,000, $300,000, $400,000. You know it's going to come. And when that happens, bring him to me. And that'll happen. Inevitably, it happens. When these guys have that gambling issue, it happens. They just keep chasing. And I'll sit them down and say, listen, I guess you didn't know, but this is my action here. You're answering to me now, so how are you going to pay me? I don't care how you do it. You got a rich uncle, go rob a bank, do whatever you have to do, but you got to pay me. And, then I'll kind of soft stroke it a little bit and say, listen, I like you as a player. I like your team. You don't have to pay me today, but here's what you're going to do. Get yourself in shape to get the money. I said, but from now on, every Monday, after Sunday's game, you come here and you're going to pay me 2% a week on the outstanding balance. And I want it in cash. And don't miss a Monday. They want to just get out of the room. But what do? Inevitably, they're going across town to find another bookmaker because on the next bet, they think they're going to win and they'll be able to pay it off. And before you know it, they're in very deep because we have a network. We know who's gambling all over town. And then they'll come back to me and I'll say, okay, we know what you're doing. How are you going to pay me? Well, I can. All right, well, here's what you're going to do. You're a quarterback. First 3 times you get that ball, you put it in the hands of the other receiver, the other team. You're a halfback, running back. First 3 times you get it, put the ball on the ground. Same thing with the receiver. You tip that into the defender's hands. I'll worry about the rest. You do this for me until I tell you don't have to do it anymore. That's how we're going to make up the loss.
Wow.
And they don't have a choice. They don't have a choice, and they're scared at that point. And, that's one way. You get a situation, I've been asked this quite often, why would a guy like Chauncey Billups, it's very sad because, I respected him as a player, he's a great player, but why would a guy like Chauncey Billups get involved? Well, what people don't understand, these guys make millions of dollars. They're not satisfied betting $100 or $10,000. They bet a lot of money. And then they lose a lot of money. And before you know it, they're in the red for $3, $4, $5 million. Well, they're not making that up on the field. How do they make it up? Well, I can make it up with gambling issues. So, they get close to somebody. Before you know it, they're using Chauncey to bring some fish into a card game and trying to fleece them so he can get half the action and get his money back. You would be surprised. I think everybody thinks that, we used to go up to these players and put a gun to their head and say, hey, you're going to work with us or else. No, they get themselves in trouble. And a lot of times they want to work with us. We hang out in the same clubs as them. They're attracted to guys like us that carry themselves the right way. And friendships evolve. And then before you know it, you're doing things together. It's not uncommon. And a lot of these guys, they came from a street background anyway, so they're not scared away from us. They want to be around us.
All right, so can you give me the psychology on this for the athletes? We know athletes love to gamble. They've been doing it forever, and they love card games and so forth. Is it the money or the competition? What is it they're pursuing?
It's definitely, gambling is an extension of their competitiveness.
Yeah.
It raises the stake in any competition that they're in. It's an adrenaline rush for them. this is what they love. You know, what I can't understand, honestly, and I've told them, the more access that you have, that you give people that have a personality conflict where they could become addictive, the more access you give them to a situation where they can have a problem, the worse it's going to be, the more widespread it's going to be. You know, last week, I believe it was, that the NCAA said now that college athletes can gamble on pro sports.
Can you believe that? Gosh.
I really can't. And I'm saying, what's the reasoning on this? And they're saying, well, you know, they want them to have the same equality as their peers on the campus. I mean, give me a break.
Well, Michael, that goes right back to the access you were talking about. The easier the access, the more trouble these guys are going to get into because, like you said, even if they're not manipulating college games, if they start betting on pro games, how many of these young men, which tend to be the ones predisposed to having a gambling issue, are going to get in too deep, and that's where the problems come from?
Absolutely, and it's not only that. You're making gamblers out of people that didn't gamble before, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you an example. When off-track betting came into New York, where you can bet, you know, on the track, you don't have to be at the track. You can bet in places that they put up storefronts all over town. Well, the cops came to us and they said, hey, we're going to put you guys out of business because now it's legal and we can have these people. They'll come to us now. And we said, yeah, let's see what happens. Well, what happens? People that never gambled before, they would only go to the track and gamble. They didn't go to bookmakers, but now they can go to OTB. They do it before work, on their lunch hour, after work. But what happens at OTB? You got to put down your credit card or you got to pay cash at the window. Well, when they lose, and they normally do, what do now? Now they start looking for the bookmaker. They actually increased our business because they had more access to gambling, and therefore their losses were bigger than they were before. And they don't understand that mentality, you know, or maybe they understand it and they don't care because they're making money, you know, all the leagues and the NCAA. I don't know what the mentality is, but it's going to be about, hey, we're making money with this, you know, we're widening our fan base, and therefore we're going to do it, and we're just going to keep telling the athletes that they shouldn't do it. It's not a good formula.
No, it's not. We're talking with Michael Franzese. I've heard you say before that athletes are easy targets for organized crime. How so?
They are because, again, you know, number one, they enjoyed being around us, and number two, they like to gamble. Yeah. And, you know, I've said this before, too. Prohibition, back in the days of Prohibition, before that, guys that came over here from Italy, they were just a bunch of guys trying to grind out a living on the street, you know, in their own neighborhoods. Prohibition comes in, bang. That's what created Cosa Nostra in this country. Gave us the money, gave us the power, gave us the organization, right? But that lasted, what, 10, 11 years. Great. Comes and goes. I was in the gas business. I pulled a scam defrauding the government out of tax. We got a 7-8 year run out of it, and that was gone. But gambling has always been the main business of the mob, and it always will be. They know it. They love it. They're good at it. They're going to be very innovative, like they are with these card machines. Somehow they got involved in that. No surprise to me. And the more access you give them to possible victims, the bigger their business is going to be. They're never going to get out of it because they love it and they're too good at it.
Hey, Michael, when you were in the life, did you used to pay people to get access to athletes?
Well, not only did I pay, I think you know the name Norby Walters, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, I do.
Okay. He was an agent for college athletes, him and Lloyd Bloom, who was an ex-football player, college football player. They formed an agency. And Norby was around me and my dad my whole life, you know. And when my dad went away, he was under me. And I gave Norby $250,000. He was representing these athletes for their pro career. And I did it specifically to get access to the athletes. I said, hey, this is a good investment for me. I'll make that back quick. That was the only reason I got involved with him. And again, to get around these athletes, to get to know them, to pal up with them. And unfortunately, that didn't work out too good for me because I went to prison about 6 months later. But Norby ended up getting in trouble. But that's what it is. They're easy targets, and you want to get around them as often as you possibly can because you're going to make money with them. Did
Norby ever pay you back, or is that money he just kept once you got put in jail?
No, I never got paid back. You know, yeah.
We're talking with Michael Franzese. I've heard you say before that if you're going to do a crime, do it alone. You know, because I'm looking at this situation that, you know, Chauncey's involved in. I mean, you don't understand how this works, and I'm just curious how it plays out. Does this start as like an illegal sports betting investigation, and when they start phone tapping, they uncover information about the card playing and so forth? Or do people start singing when they get informants? Like, how does this all play out to where they have, multiple investigators involved and they have, a card playing and illegal sports betting? How does that play out?
Well, let me tell you, I read here that there is somebody, whether he'd be an undercover person or an informant, one of the two, that has 3,000, something like 3,000 either taped phone conversations, text messages, 3,000. So you got an undercover informant or an undercover agent working on this, and this is why this has become so widespread. They just let him go for the past year or however long this investigation was. But let me go back to, you remember Tim Donaghy?
Yes.
The referee, the NBA referee. Well, you know how he was found out? There was an investigation that had nothing to do with him in New York. It was an organized crime investigation, and they had the phones tapped. And one guy happened to mention, hey, there's this NBA ref. He's in another city. I think it might have been Boston. I don't remember. He's in another city. That guy just tipped them off, and that's how this investigation started, and that's how they got to Tim Donaghy. It was an unrelated investigation. The more people you have in any kind of a deal like this, the more chances you have of this coming to the surface and law enforcement finding out. You cannot do something so widespread like this. The one thing that not shocked me, but really surprised me, is when I heard that there were members of all 4 of the 5 families that were involved in this. This had to be a pretty big thing going on because normally you don't have that. The last time I heard where there was cooperation among 4 families in New York was going back to the commission trial when it was all about the concrete, when we were all involved in that. All the families were involved in that. But that's widespread, that's big dollars, and there's a lot of people involved. And I would say this. If the government would treat these gambling investigations or this area of an investigation like they treat, the SEC with Wall Street, this will be unending. It will continue. They'll just keep finding people, no question, because it's not going to stop.
How do you think it's going to play out with Billups based on how how these operations work?
Well, again, understand this is gambling. I mean, this isn't, God forbid, murder or something like that. You got 33 people, I think, that were indicted. 25 of them at least, maybe more, are going to go in. They're going to take a plea. They're going to make a deal. Who's going to cooperate? I don't think you're going to see heavy sentences here because, I don't think so. Unless something else occurs here, I don't think you're going to see that. But listen, careers are ruined, reputations are ruined. And who knows, who else is going to be involved? Because when law enforcement sits you down and say, hey, I want to know anything else who else is involved in this? What are the players? Where is it going to go? Because, somebody had asked me, well, I shouldn't say that. The attorney for Chauncey Billups said, what the government did here was so horrible. They made Chauncey do a perp walk. They arrested him at his hotel. He would have surrendered. Why did they have to do that? And I wanted to tell the lawyer, give me a break. They live for this. They arrested Chauncey Billups they live to make headlines like this. This is how careers are made. Of course they're going to do that. They're not going to let him walk in the back door and nobody's going to know about it. This is a big deal, and they want the credit for it.
Yeah. We're talking with Michael Franzese. Your book, Blood Covenant, back in the day was a game changer for me. It changed my life. I love your story. And I remember you saying once, I think it was even in the book, where when you first got out of prison, that you would alter your routine each and every day because you were trying to protect yourself and your family. Do you still do that today? Do you still mix up your routine?
No, that heat is gone off of me. The bottom line with me is that, when I walked away from that life, everybody naturally assumed that I was going to be cooperating with the government and that I'd be testifying against, my former associates. Because you got to understand, I knew a lot of people, and I was in that life for, 20 years. I mean, I knew a lot of things. So people were worried. And the FBI putting pressure on me at the time, they were putting my name on the witness list of trials that were coming up in New York. So even though I was telling people, don't believe that, I'm not coming in, they didn't believe me. And then the trials keep coming up. I don't show up. And then the feds violate my parole, put me back in prison. And people are saying, wait a second, this guy isn't hurting anybody. He wants out of the life. That's bad. We don't like that. But, the heat went off of me over a period of time. And, And I don't have any issues right now. I have the same issues that any other high-profile person has. You know, you got to watch for crazy people in the world. But other than that, I'm okay.
No, that's good. Didn't you do some of your time in Sheridan, Oregon, which is just outside of Portland?
I did. You know, they sent me up there. I have to say this. It was probably the nicest prison I was ever in. I really mean that. And my family liked visiting me there because the guards were so nice. You know, it was a new prison when I got there. It was only open for a couple of months. And the correctional officers hadn't learned how to be mean yet. They were really nice. It was just a nice place to do time. Unfortunately, I was only there for about 3 or 4 months, and they shipped me out.
Oh.
But yeah, it was a good spot.
Okay, you got to walk me through this story because it gave me chills up my spine when I read it in the book. I remember the movie Fatal Vision from when I was younger. It scared the daylights out of me, and I was afraid my dad. I was hoping he was not a bad guy. You actually had you did time with Jeffrey McDonald, who was convicted of killing his wife and his 2 girls. And you said, I think the way it was written in the book was that you would have conversations where he'd be pleading his innocence to you because he's maintained his innocence all these years. And you said there were moments where, based on how the sunlight would hit his eyes, you thought he might be telling me the truth. And there's times where you thought he's lying to me. So walk us through that, because that's incredible that you actually had conversations with him.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with him. Actually, we were in Terminal Island together, and then we were in Sheridan, Oregon together for a while.
Wow.
I can tell you a funny story about him. You know, he was a very astute, very smart guy, and he would go over his case with me because he knew that, you know, I've been around for a while in the legal system with all the trials I had. So he would talk to me, and he sounded very convincing. But then one thing happened. You know, he was on a phone. He was talking to his attorneys a lot, and it was count time, 4 o'clock. You got to get off the phone. So the correctional officer kept telling him, Jeffrey, you got to go. And he kept, like, putting up his hand, okay. And, Jeffrey, you got to go, right? This went on for maybe 2-3 minutes, and the CO kept telling him, and then all of a sudden, the fire in his eyes, he slammed down the phone, his eyes turned, and I said, okay, there he is. There he is.
And the other,
you know,
you saw it, the dark side. You saw the dark side from Jeffrey McDonald, Michael.
I did. You know, after that, it was funny. We were walking the yard in Sheridan, Oregon, and and normally the prisons have this wire that goes over the top of the yard,
yes,
so that a helicopter couldn't come in to have him an escape, right?
Yeah.
So he's talking to me about his appeal, and Michael, what do you think? You know, and this and that and that. And I'll never forget, I looked at him because we were kind of nestled in between a mountain there, I remember.
Uh-huh.
And he said to me, Mike, what do you think? You think I got a shot here? I said, Jeffrey, you want to know the truth? He said, yeah. I said, look up in the sky here. I said, there's no wire over here right now. I said, your best chance is you see a helicopter coming over that mountain there. They'll never see it. Let it drop in the yard. Get in it and get the heck out of here. That's about the best chance you have of getting out of there.
Oh, that's so good.
You didn't like that too much.
No, that's good. One final thought. I think the part of the book that hit me the hardest was because you were a guy who had, you know, in the life, you had great success. You were wealthy and, you know, you were flying private jets, all this stuff. But you said that when you finally were put in prison and that gate shut, that you felt, and for someone like you who was used to having power, you felt hopelessness, which you said crushed you. And you're a man that needs evidence and stuff. So you said a prison guard slid a Bible to you, and then you started going through the process of reading the Word, and that's what began the change in your life. Is that how it went down?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, I had done 5 years, and, I visited my dad for 20 years. So, I mean, I knew what prison was about. It was no stranger to it. I did my 5 years. I was out on parole for 13 months. And then the feds were so upset with me that they violated my parole, threw me back in, told me they were indicting me on another racketeering case. They took all my money. They went into the bank, leaned my bank accounts, took my car away, went to my house with a search warrant, cleaned us out. And they said, Franzese, we're done. You're never going to see the street again. And they threw me in solitary in the hole. And it was that feeling that I said, wow, this time I'm done. I said, they took all my money. You know, you don't beat these racketeering cases with a public defender. I spent millions defending myself. I said, I got people mad at me. They're not going to put me on the yard. I said, my wife, 27 years old, she waited for me 5 years, 13 months on parole. We got 2 little babies. How's she going to wait for me now? I'm going to lose the girl I did all of this for. It was just really a bad feeling. Like I felt I'm done. This time I don't have an answer. You know, all the, alleged power I had on the street isn't going to help me at all right now. it was a tough feeling. And yes, that correctional officer did push a Bible through the door, and that started me on that journey. And I was in lockdown for 29 months and 7 days, so I was in solitary for that amount of time. But, in retrospect, it really helped me because that's when I really came to my faith during that time. And you're right, it was evidence. I had my wife send me books on every faith. I was reading everything that you can imagine, and I just came out there believing in my faith, in the Christian faith.
Well, I think it's awesome, man. The way that the Lord is a way maker, and the way Jesus can take anyone from any walk of life and be able to utilize them for His purpose is amazing. But Michael, I've always been a big fan, and I appreciate your time, and thanks for coming on the show. But most importantly, to continue to spread the message of the dangers of gambling and organized crime, so that hopefully a lot of these younger athletes will avoid those type of dangers, and we don't have these type of situations on our hands.
Well, I will. I'll do my part, and thanks for doing your part and helping us spread the word, because we basically have to save these kids, their careers, and in some cases their lives, because I've seen them really spiral out of control, when this addiction gets to them. So hopefully we can help a bunch of them avoid that, and that's what this is all about.
All right, check out his YouTube page and, of course, the website, michaelfranzese.com. Michael, thank you for your time. That was awesome.
All right, my friend. Thank you. Take care, and anytime you need me, I'm here.
Okay, you got it, buddy. I appreciate it. There you go, Michael Franzese. In-season tournament, but man, you got to feel pretty good about where this group is at. 3-2 after the first 5 games, and the defense looks great. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Yeah, college games I'm looking at this weekend. I love Texas at home, -2.5 against Vanderbilt. Not a big fan of what Texas has done so far this season, and Arch Manning has struggled. But I like the chances that Texas has to be able to come and get this win against Vandy. Big opportunity for the Longhorns. And outside of that, there aren't too many other games I'm just eyeing where I'm like, wow, I have to sit down and watch that. I think there's going to be some games where we don't know about it right now, but will turn out to be really good. I like Kansas State at home to cover the 7.5 against Texas Tech. And I was thinking about this. I'm hoping that Tennessee destroys Oklahoma, and then eventually Josh Heupel can wind up back in Norman and take over for Brent Venables. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Josh Heupel because he won a national championship for Oklahoma back in 2000. And so I want to see him wind up back in Norman. But I'm just ticked off at Oklahoma right now because of their a couple of mind-boggling losses. Last week to Ole Miss, and then the poor showing against Texas when they rushed John Mateer out there in the field, which was absurd. It's crazy. Also a reminder, I talk about this all the time, but you got to take advantage of your opportunities when they present themselves. Arizona State would be a great example. Last year, they had Cam Scatteraboo, who nearly won a Heisman. Sam Levitt, the young quarterback from Westland, played extremely well. And they had remarkable health throughout the course of the season with their players up until the end of the season when Jordan Tyson, their big-time star wide receiver, got hurt. And it translated into a monster year where they made the playoff, nearly upset Texas. But this year, injuries have just ravaged the team. And they're a good football team, and Kenny Dillingham's doing a great job. But now Levitt's out for a period of time. He's got some type of lower body injury, a foot injury, I think. Jordan Tyson's been beat up. They've got multiple key defenders who have been out. Jordan Tyson's probably not going to play this weekend. And you're playing a big game on the road against Iowa State. Critical game in conference when you're going to have Jeff Sims at quarterback, no Jordan Tyson, and a slew of defenders out. Meaning there's no guarantee you'll get back. You got to make sure you capitalize on the opportunity when you have it. All right, we're going to dig into more of the football when we come back. Trailblazers Nuggets coming up at 7, tip-off at 7 with Travis Demers and Michael Holton on the call. And it's all right here in your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. All right, I think this is a fun exercise now that we're getting deeper into the college football season. If we were to look at the brackets based on the current top 25, and I'm just going to use the AP to give you an idea of what we're looking at right now. So your four buys in the college football playoff would be number one, Ohio State, number two, Indiana, number three, Texas A&M, and number four, Alabama. Your first round matchups on December 19th and 20th would be number 12, Memphis against number 5, Georgia, with the winner advancing to take on Alabama. You'd have number 9, Vanderbilt, taking on number 8, Georgia Tech, the winner advancing to meet Ohio State. You'd have BYU or Miami, the 11 seed, taking on number 6, Oregon, with the winner advancing to play Texas A&M. And then you would have either BYU or Miami taking on number 7, Ole Miss, with the winner advancing to take on Indiana. So right now for Oregon, you'd be looking at a 6 seed, a first-round matchup of either BYU or Miami, and then the rights to be able to play in the quarterfinals against Texas A&M on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. How great would that be? Can you imagine a first-round matchup? Think about this for just a moment, Duck fans. A first-round matchup at Autzen with Mario Cristobal and the Miami Hurricanes. Isn't that awesome? I mean, think about some of these games that we would get. Vandy and Georgia Tech, great regional battle. BYU or Miami at Ole Miss. And then you've got Indiana, Ohio State, Bama, and Texas A&M waiting after getting a first-round bye. Gosh, the playoff, I don't know how anyone could look at the playoff and say, well, I really don't need that in my life. I've been waiting my entire life to have what we have now, and it's only going to get better because they're going to expand, and we're going to get a 16-team playoff, and it's only going to continue to get better. So, again, look at what the playoff has given us now over the last year plus. We have a legitimate way of determining a national champion. We're going to get expansion, which means more teams will be involved in the playoff. But most importantly, you have many more teams and many more fan bases across the country that have hope and are playing for something meaningful because they have access to the playoff. Like a team like Memphis, they would have never had a chance in HE double hockey sticks to ever participate in a national playoff before, but they do now because you get that group of 5 team in. Or heck, even teams like BYU, Georgia Tech. At Georgia Tech, by the way, unbeaten and playing great football. Indiana, I love it. Texas A&M is playing great football, coming off that blowout win over LSU when they ended Brian Kelly. And you've got these on-campus matchups. The idea of a playoff game being played at Autzen in front of the home crowd with Mario Cristobal and crew coming to town, like, give me that in my life. I need that. You need that. I need that. We all need it. So I'm just thrilled with where college football is at. There you have it. Love Texas over Vanderbilt this weekend. I mentioned that. I think Kansas State getting 7.5 at home against Texas Tech is a pretty good number. The 2 games in the NFL I love. Houston to defeat Denver at home this weekend. And I love Pittsburgh to bounce back, coming off the home loss to Green Bay, hosting the Colts in Pittsburgh this week. And I think it's a get-right game for the Steelers, and I think they get over in that spot. Now, I mentioned at the top of the show, my thoughts on the Blazers right now. They love the way they're playing. And just like you, I see the same thing. The energy, the effort, the defense, the way they're approaching games, the number of different guys they have on the floor, their versatility. But most importantly, they're just playing hard. And I know it sounds absurd when we talk about pro athletes. It's like, man, those guys play really hard. I mean, you would think, you would work off the premise that when you're making millions of dollars, getting a king's ransom to play a kid's game, that playing hard should just be a part of the process. But the reality is that some teams don't play as hard as other teams. And right now, no one is approaching games with the type of intensity the Blazers are. And they're messing teams up for stretches during games with the pace and the pressure and creating a bunch of easy buckets for themselves. So I'm really excited about what I see, and I just like the different guys who have stepped up. Denny Avdia clearly is a budding superstar in the NBA. He can do so many different things. And really, the only thing I can say about Avdia is that, one, he takes some awkward falls that he might want to try and correct a little bit so he doesn't get hurt. and he turns the ball over a little bit too much for my liking. That's it. If I'm critiquing him outside of that, man, I mean, he is full go all the time. Attacking the paint. He's on the fast break. He can shoot the three. He's a willing and capable defender. He's physical. He can play multiple spots on the floor. He can defend multiple positions. He's a great teammate, smart. I love everything about Deni Avdija. Like, seriously, it's like, come on, man. He's killing it out there. Big fan of Drew Holiday. I think we all have been fans of Holiday, and we've all respected him ever since he annihilated the Blazers in that stupid playoff series against the Pelicans. But his veteran leadership, his understanding of the game, his calm presence, the fact that he's always in the right position defensively. Like if you're a coach, isn't he the exact type of player you want on your team? You never have to worry about Drew Holiday. He's always in the right spot. He's always doing the right thing. And then you got this youth. You know, Klingen's playing a really good ball right now. Obviously, Toumani Camara is the team's best defender. He's got limitless potential. Sky's the limit for Toumani. And then we'll get Scoot Henderson back real soon. I just love everything about this team. And I love this matchup tonight because now the Blazers, when they go into these games against contenders in the Western Conference, they can compete. And they can put pressure on this team. And they can put themselves in a position to have success. And if you're going to, the best way to learn and the best way to continue to improve is to play the best. And Jokic is awesome. And I like this Nuggets team. One, I'm a big fan of Coach Adelman, obviously the family and what his dad did for the Trailblazers. But I just like their style of play. And Jokic is, he's playing like five-dimensional chess out there. He sees things that a lot of guys don't see. Going to be a good challenge for the Blazers tonight. But most importantly, I just like where they're at, 3-2, playing the right way. And we'll see how things continue to shake out. But this group, man, they responded well to the Chauncey news. They're continuing to battle. But, man, the energy, the pace, the defensive mindedness of this group. And when you play like that, that's why do you think every opponent they've played has made mention of the Blazers and given them props and complimented their approach and their play and their energy? Because they see it too. And that makes me happy. That makes me very happy. So I'm starving for good basketball played the right way. And I think I've mentioned this before. I love two-way players. I love teams that can play defense. And at some point, you've got to be able to rely on your defense and lean on that to get you through some rough stretches throughout the course of the season. And the Blazers can do that. And good teams find ways to win in multiple ways. And that's every sport. Finding ways to win different types of games and because that's what the sport calls. It calls upon you to be able to find different ways to win games. It'd be nice if you could just shoot 50% from three every night, draining threes. Offense is no problem, but that's just not reality. That's not how the game is played. You're going to have nights when you're stinking up the joint out there on offense where you can't make a shot. Your threes aren't falling. You're turning it over. How do you bounce back? Well, we're going to D up and we're going to play at a pace and with intensity the other team can't match. And with that pressure, they'll unravel and it'll create opportunities for us. It's a pretty simple game now. And it's nice to go into games knowing that our team's going to play a lot harder than your team, and we're going to take the fight to you. Now I love that, And the best part is this team's young, so we don't need them to win a championship now, but we want to see the steps and the movement in that direction. And so you have good culture. They've done a good job of filling the locker room with the right type of guys, and they're playing the right way. And props to Tiago Splitter for implementing this offense. They'll get better with that, too, as they continue to learn. So there you have it. And I feel better. Shaedon Sharpe started to get that shooting touch rolling a little bit against Utah. It would be nice to see him come out and have a big game tonight against Denver. So there you have it. I'm pumped. You should be pumped. I'm pumped. We got a lot of things to be excited about. All right, you can reach out to me on X, at Chad and Rip City. You can jump on board at 503-248-0620. Don't forget, every Trailblazer game streams live on our free iHeartRadio app, so it's a great way to follow the game. You can also listen to the station, podcast, and keep up on any of the shows. Go to our YouTube. Go to youtube.com. Pull up our homepage, Rip City Radio 620. We live stream all of our local shows. It's a great way to follow the station. Be sure to like and subscribe to the page. And then with our Trailblazer coverage throughout the week. We're going to give you live and local coverage on non-game days from 2 to 7. And we're giving you Courtside Monday with Chris Burkhardt. We've got the Trailblazers Insider Show every Tuesday and replays on Wednesday with Sean Hyken. We've got Blazers wrap up with Brendan Slaughter live and played back. And we've got our Trailblazer podcast between Section 113 with Travis and I, Blazers Balcony with Brooke Olzendam and Casey Holdaw, and the Briefcase with Casey Holdaw. So we're giving you all of this content, different perspectives on the team throughout the course of each and every week so that you can keep up on your Trailblazers. And I'm pretty excited about that. So there you have it. And oh, by the way, it's Halloween. So I hope that wherever you're at right now, you're not being bombarded by weirdos, adults at the workplace in costume. That's very uncomfortable. Like I was last week when I ran into that guy in a robe with no shirt underneath because he supposedly was Hugh Hefner. And his wife was Julia Roberts from Pretty Woman a week before Halloween. Didn't need that in my life, but I got it. And I'm just going to try and navigate safely around the adults. I'm not worried about the kids. I'm trying to have a good time. But the adults who take it to the extreme, it's like, come on, man, what are you doing? Aren't you a grown man? Why do you have a robe on with no shirt? I'm Hugh Hefner. See my cigar? Okay, whatever, man. Have a nice day. And so there you have it. So hope you're enjoying your day. Big Blazer game tonight. And then we cruise right into another football weekend. Love it. Dude, I feel alive, man. This is the best time of the year. And then we got the Dodgers who will be gripping as we get underway here with the World Series. They're going to need Yamo to go complete game. Everything that I worried about with the Dodgers is coming to fruition right now. You get past their starter. If you get their starter out of the game, their bullpen is a giant gas can that will walk out on the mound and ignite themselves, aside from Sasaki. Trinan cannot be trusted. Basically, anybody else. They had that remarkable performance in Game 3 where they had multiple guys step up, including Klein to step in and get the job done. But for the most part, the bullpen over the last half of the season has been you can't trust them. So I guess if you want the Dodgers to win, you need a big performance from Yamo today. And hopefully that will give the Dodgers bats enough time between Game 6 and Game 7 to get going. But really, it's been the offense. They haven't been able to get the run support. And Toronto, you got to give them credit, man. They are a scrappy group. And they've had guys come up clutch. They've made better baseball plays throughout the course of the series, and that's why they're up 3-2 going back home. And it's just hard to imagine the Dodgers right now, based on what I've seen over the last couple of games, getting back-to-back wins on the road in Toronto. Hard to see that happening, but if there's one team that can do it, it's this team because look at their players. You spend $1 billion on your lineup, you should be able to win games. But those guys, they've been ice cold the last couple of games. Freeman, Betts, Shohei, they need those guys to step up. Teoscar Hernandez, they're going to need a group effort. But you know how baseball works. You get a hot, Yamamoto on the bump, it can correct things real quick. All right, we'll keep things rolling. We're going to eavesdrop into my conversation with Alex Brink to prepare all of you for the football weekend as we get ready for a big weekend in all sports, which is great. And the Trailblazers tonight tip off with the Nuggets coming up at 7. Chris Burkhardt will have game day at 5 on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. All right, River City Drive, and very happy to welcome back our college football and NFL insider, former Washington State Cougar quarterback, and now with E4 Sports. It's Alex Brink. And Alex, I want to start with this in light of the crazy news that's gone down over the last week. When you were recruited and eventually joined the Washington State Cougars, did they have any type of freshman symposium, the NCAA, to give warnings about the dangers of gambling, if any? Like, what do you remember about that time?
Nothing in college. Obviously, like, legalized sports gambling wasn't a thing in the way it is now. And when we went to the NFL, there's a big rookie symposium that all the drafted athletes go to. I don't know if it's exactly the same now, but there was a big, there's a pretty big chunk there on, it was kind of all wrapped into, the financial side of things and, security and all that. So I do remember that from the NFL, but nothing college-wise.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on this new rule? The timing is so perfect where the NCAA came out and said they're making a change starting on November 1st. College athletes and staffers will be able to bet on professional sports. Do you have a take on that?
I mean, I think it's all a slippery slope, but look, like we jumped that shark a while ago, right? Like we're kind of way past that. So, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, they probably, the NCAA that is, they want to avoid what would be considered maybe a, scandal, quote unquote, if there was some sort of, gambling on on pro teams. So they just get out ahead of it and make it not a thing. At the same time, I think I saw, various quotes over the last few weeks and last week or so with all the news going on. It's like we said, like there's just if you're an athlete participating, there's just no reason to be doing it. Like just stay away from it, right? And for a number of reasons. But I don't know. It's all a very slippery slope.
Yeah, I agree. It's very risky, and I would say that's the best advice. Just stay away. There's no need for it. Stay away and avoid any potential danger that could come your way. Now, I wanted to ask you about a guy who I had a chance to talk to one-on-one for the first time, Oregon State interim coach Rob Akey. I did not realize that he was your defensive coordinator when you were at Washington State. But, Alex, he's one of those guys where 90 seconds into the conversation, he made me feel like I was one of his sons. It was impressive.
Well, Rob Akey's one of the best human beings in all of sports, in all of college football, and was super fortunate to, be with Coach Ake for, 3 years, I think, as the D coordinator at Washington State. Then he went over to the University of Idaho, just, 8 miles away in Moscow, and was the head coach there and had a lot of success. Took a Idaho team that at the time was competing at the FBS level, right? They're in the WAC. He took them to a bowl game. They've been terrible forever. He took them to a bowl game. And so, he's a fantastic coach, incredible motivator of people. And, it's one of my biggest fears about the game this weekend is that, Rob Akey's the head man on that sideline because I know that he can get players to play for him.
Yeah, he told me the whole key for them or focus throughout the course of the bye week was to get some of that swagger back. I can't think of a better guy to take over a program that's going through the difficult spot at Oregon State than Rob Akey. He would seem like a perfect fit to transition a team.
Yeah, they kind of fell backwards into a really good spot, right? Like you don't wish any of what happened, to Trent Bray on anyone. That's a really bad situation with a lot of things out of his control, in my personal opinion. There's a lot of issues going on, I think, within Oregon State athletics right now that they're trying to sort out. And the football program not having success has really shined a light on some of that stuff. And so, Trent Bray, obviously, they had to move on from him, but to have Rob Akey in that building, I tell you what, and some of the other people that are in that building, Danny Langsdorf, the offensive coordinator that they went back to, right, who'd been there forever with Mike Riley and is a fantastic offensive mind. I mean, they're able to kind of get some guys to help steady the ship, which, it'll help the young coaches in that building, and it's going to obviously help the athletes.
Alex, I want to ask you about the coach on the other side, your guy, Jimmy Rogers. He'll never get National Coach of the Year honors this year because of the record. But I think he's done as good of a job coaching as anybody in the entire country, and I sincerely mean that. What's been the key to getting him or his guys to get them to continue to play hard and buy in each and every week? It's impressive.
Very impressive. There's a few different layers to it. I'll start with this, is that what you see is what you get with Jimmy Rogers, and that's not always the case with college football coaches, right? It's hard. I think some coaches find it hard to be authentic and to be honest. And so inevitably people and athletes, right, see through those things. And that's where you lose culture and you lose programs like at LSU or Florida or whatever, right? That's how those things fall apart. And the good ones, right, build culture through honesty and radical candor and, caring about players, but also, treating them as adults and as people. And so I think Jimmy Rogers has shown he can do that, right? A good example is the quarterback situation, right? They made a decision out of training camp to go with a young player, Jackson Potter. After 3 games, he realized maybe that wasn't the best fit. And he went back to Zevi Ethouse, who was kind of the leader in the clubhouse, to be the starter, what most people thought during the offseason. And look, it takes a lot of maturity as a coach and, to be able to say, hey, I made a mistake, right? There's plenty of coaches that would have rode that out for a while and kind of use it as an excuse or maybe had too much pride. So I think that's a really good example of kind of who he is. The other side is, he brought some players with him from South Dakota State, and you watch those young men play who played at a lower level, technically FCS level. I mean, they're most of the time they're the best players on the field, and that includes playing at places like Virginia and Ole Miss. I mean, these kids play hard, they're well coached, and I think that speaks to what Jimmy Rogers and his staff could do at a place like Washington State moving forward with less resources.
All right, so the game this weekend, is it kind of an unknown then with a new coach taking over? Like, what are your thoughts? What are the keys for you?
Yeah, I'm really nervous about this game, right? It's kind of the old wounded animal, backed into a quarter deal. I mean, Oregon State's had obviously a really tough year, but they've had moments that have been bright spots, right? And they've had games where offense and defense have been good, but the special teams are terrible because of injuries and, inconsistency. And then quarterback play has been a challenge at times. And, they haven't been able to put it all together. But the athletes on that field and on that roster are still the same P5 level players that like Washington State has left over too, right? Like there's good football players on that Oregon State roster. So it worries me, that Coach Akey and his staff will get them ready to go with a win and then a bye week. Washington State has to stop the run, right? Oregon State's, as usual, if Anthony Hankerson gets going and those backs get going, they can be really dangerous offensively. I like the receiver group, but it'll take pressure off the quarterbacks, whether it's Malik Murphy or Jabari Johnson. I think defensively, that unit hasn't quite figured out how to put it together, and they haven't been as consistent as you've seen in the past. So I'm interested to see if they try and dial up the pressure. If so, if they try and bring pressure, can Zevi Ethouse protect the football on the road?
We're talking to Alex Brink, a former Washington State Cougar. He's now with E4 Sports here on the Rip City Drivers, our college football and NFL analyst. So Brian Kelly gets fired at LSU. The biggest lesson I learned through this whole process is that I don't trust anyone that uses a fake accent in public. It creeps me out. But for you, Alex, what's your takeaway from this? Brian Kelly, a little bit older when he took the job, got paid a big amount of money, but he didn't have the same type of success at LSU that he did at Cincy and Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the world changed very quickly for a lot of coaches over the last, 2, 3, 4 years. And there are some guys that just still have not figured out that they have to do things differently, right? Interpersonally, in recruiting, the way they manage players, the way they manage staff. It's a different world, right? And I candidly think it's for the better. I mean, I think a guy like Brian Kelly, I mean, it's been well documented, just like the way he treats people and the way he acts. And you can get away with that when you have kind of, unchecked power as the old college football model where players couldn't leave and, you were basically stuck no matter what on a roster, held to a scholarship. But now with player movement and NIL, coaches have to manage people better and they have to treat people better. And if they don't, they're not going to win. And so I think Brian Kelly and some other guys of recent note are a byproduct of their inability to change with the times.
Alex Brink here on the Rip City Drive. Well, what coaching job do you think is the best one available now? LSU's open with Brian Kelly out. Florida is open. We've got Oklahoma State and Penn State. What's your take?
Boy. Well, we talked about last week. I'm no fan of the Florida job. I don't think the Florida job is good. I don't think the Florida job is good at all. It's probably crazy for me to say. Of all those, I think Oklahoma State's the best job. It's well funded. It's in a conference where you can go and compete and get into, as long as things don't change, you get into the college football playoff easier than you could maybe in an SEC, in like an SEC, right? I think or a Big Ten, frankly, if you're Penn State. I mean, Penn State's going to have a really hard time competing, as you've seen, right? James Franklin did actually a really nice job, but with Ohio State and Oregon and all that's going on, that's a hard place to win out of. I think LSU's a good job. Like, I think it's probably most people would say LSU. It's a really good job. I just think with the way the world is now, you got to find a place where you can have resources. The logo doesn't matter like it used to. You need a place with resources, and Oklahoma State has resources in the NIL world where they can go win.
All right, let's talk a little NFL. The New England Patriots are playing great football right now, and they're competing with the Bills in the AFC East. I'm not surprised that Mike Vrabel's getting the job done. That's what he does. I just didn't expect it to happen this soon. But what makes him a great coach in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think, this isn't the same for everybody, but I do think his playing background and being a part of a successful organization, being a team captain, like all the things, I think that's what's making him a great coach, right? He's obviously a really smart guy. He seems like, again, I don't know Mike Vrabel at all, but from his experience in Tennessee and seeing him transition to New England, he seems to have a really good, again, like kind of feel for people and organizations. And at the NFL is what college is, right? Has become, where you kind of have to be able to be straight up with these professional football players, these grown men, and you have to be able to be so straight up with them that they understand that you are doing what is best for the team first, but also to help them get to that point, because in the end, the team's only going to have success if the players have success, right? And I think that's where Mike Vrabel does a really nice job of, you can tell, like, guys in that room, grown men in that room, really respect him and play hard for him and buy into what he's doing. So that, and look, like when you hit on a quarterback like Drake May, right? I was a fan of Drake May coming out of college. Like, when you hit on a quarterback, that changes the trajectory of any head coach.
Oh, that's amazing. Alex Brink here on the Rip City Drive. Tyler Shuck, I know you're familiar with him. He's going to make a start this weekend for the Saints. What's the key to putting him in a position to have success?
Yeah, I mean, they got to find a way to establish the run. I mean, that sounds like a lot of coach speak, but I mean, I think.
Well, not enough coaches do it, Alex. Not enough coaches are doing a good job of establishing the run.
Good point. Yeah, the Saints are a few years away, right? So, Spencer Rattler kind of got thrown to the wolves a little bit. I do think for Tyler Shuck, that's helpful that, he got to see it and kind of be in and around it. And, this may be the best option, right, where he doesn't have to start kind of right away. But, again, I think the Saints are a little ways away. So this goes back to my conversation about, whether Tyler Shuck or Spencer Rattler do well on the field. It's not probably a reflection of them as a player. It's probably more of a reflection of where that organization is at and hopefully moves forward from with Kellen Moore as the head coach. And so, again, I think they need to establish the run, probably force a couple turnovers on defense, but I think it has a chance to be, some tough sledding.
All right, I've got two more football questions for you. Number one, Chiefs and Bills are going to meet up again this weekend in Buffalo. This game obviously is critical because these two are battling for AFC supremacy. I want to know from you as a former quarterback, what are you looking forward to seeing in this matchup when the Chiefs and Bills meet up again between Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen? What are you going to be paying attention to?
Yeah, the thing that I look for, like when I'm watching these games, is there's always these third down plays, like kind of in the middle of these games that seem benign, right? Like one team's up 14-7, and somebody's got a 3rd and 6, right? And on the 40-yard line, and it just seems so simple, or not important, I guess I should say. And then one of these quarterbacks or one of these play callers calls a great play or makes a great play, and they convert the third down, then they go score. And then all of a sudden it's 14-14 and we're rolling, or it's 21-7. And and that's what I like to look for, is that game within the game. And oftentimes it's those like third downs, somewhere in the middle of the game, middle of the field. You don't think it's that important, but it changes the trajectory of the game because they just one of these guys makes such a spectacular play. And it's usually not one of the ones that's for a touchdown.
I love those type of plays, and you're right. A lot of times they don't get the attention they deserve. Okay, so I was watching the Broncos annihilate the Cowboys this week, and I enjoyed that immensely. And by the way, Broncos ran the ball. They were ahead of the chains, and guess what? Bo Nix had options downfield. It's pretty amazing how that works, but that's not the point. So he's at the line of scrimmage, and he's getting everyone set, and I hear, alert, alert. And that's something we hear every weekend, and I want to know what is going on when the quarterback says, alert, alert.
Could be a couple different things. Sometimes they're alerting like some version of either a defense or a pressure that they either talk about or they expect on that down, right? So, he may be saying alert, alert because he thinks somebody's going to blitz, and that would tell if that guy blitzes, that might tell a receiver that he's either changing his route to be the hot route, which means like the guy I'm throwing to if I get pressure, or it's just alerting, again, whoever the person is that should be expecting the ball, like it may be coming your way because of blitz, right? That's one. It could also fall in to the bucket we've talked about before about kind of when they say, can, or something like that, which is flipping the play, right? You could alert to a different type of play the same way you can a play in the huddle.
One thing we noticed, like Aaron Rodgers, John Elway, like these quarterbacks, a lot of times will say the same thing, like a certain color and a number. Like I think Elway's was always red 85. I think Rodgers is like 318 or something like that. But
green,
green 18,
green 80.
So what is that? What is that? Because they say the same thing before every play.
Yeah, so that's the snap count. So the snap count is some version of set hut really fast. So they'll go set hut, and then it's color number, set hut. And so everybody knows that like that's like your base cadence. And then if I had on 2, I would be like set hut, wide 80, set hut, hut. So that's on 2. I could say like the other way alert could come into play is if I need to snap the ball. Like say the play clock's running down, alert, set hut, and then I'm just snapping it right now.
Oh, okay.
Green 80 or white 80, color number, those mean something. So if you hear them saying the same thing all the time, that means nothing. But then lots of times systems have like red changes a play, right? Red changes a play, blue changes a play, like something like that. So the color number means something. It's usually a different, right? Like they'll say the same thing all the time. Then one time they'll say red 80 or red 40, and that means something different.
Gosh, I love that. I have VHS tapes of Joe Montana. He used to say sometimes black 59 Razor. I had no idea what it meant. I just assumed it meant that he and Jerry Rice were about to F somebody up out there.
Yep, that's exactly. Generally, that's what. If you hear it change, it means the quarterback knows something's happening, and he's probably got a beat on the defense.
Oh, it's so good. All right, you're doing great work with E4 Sports, and I'm excited about it. But thanks to you, one of my favorite interviews ever was Brian Henniger, a former PGA pro, who is a terrific guy. But he's leading up the golf farm with you guys. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, well, super lucky to meet Brian Henninger at the Golf Farm about 2 years ago now, which is based in Tualatin. The Golf Farm is really was a passion project from Brian Henninger, who former PGA Tour player, 2-time winner. He was the 54-hole leader at the Masters in '95 with Ben Crenshaw. I mean, just one of the best teachers. Actually voted Golf Digest best teacher in Oregon just recently. And him and Amy Simonson, his partner over there, are fantastic coaches. The Golf Farm's 3 indoor simulators, putting green, all the things you need, a gym. If you are a golfer that's looking to improve in the Portland metro area, you got to go check out the Golf Farm in Tualatin. If you're in Bend, you happen to be, we have a location in Bend also. But for those in Portland, go check out the Golf Farm, thegolffarm.com. With winter coming, tons of options, lessons, memberships. And what's really cool is we have what we call TPI programs. So Titleist Performance Institute, gold standard in golf, strength and conditioning, movement, flexibility. We have TPI certified physical therapists and instructors that'll take you through a winter plan to get you ready for come springtime when we get to tee it up again, Chad.
I love it, man. There's nothing better than golf instruction. It's my favorite. Alex Brink, former Washington State Cougar, our college football and NFL insider with E4 Sports. Alex, hey, enjoy the casual drive down to Corvallis for the game this weekend. We'll talk next week.
Easy money. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Chad.
All right, big thanks to Alex Brink. We'll come back, and I got some final thoughts for you as we get ready for Blazer Game Day. Chris Burkhardt coming up at 5. Nuggets Trailblazers going to tip off from Moda at 7 here on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. All right, Rip City Drive. Game day's coming up at 5 with Chris Burkhart. And we got the Trailblazers and Nuggets tip-off at 7 o'clock from Moda right here on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Just taking a look at the NFL playoff picture. based on what we know right now, I think I can identify the 7 playoff teams from each conference. Looking at the standings right now, the AFC East. I was wrong about the New England Patriots. They're a year ahead of schedule. They sit atop the AFC East right now at 6-2. They've had inspired defensive play, and they're getting great play from the young quarterback, Drake May. It's amazing how much of a difference a coach makes in the NFL, but Mike Vrabel was a genius hire, and he just knows how to win games, and he makes good decisions, and he puts them in the right spot. So I think you're going to have 2 playoff teams from the East, New England and Buffalo. And I don't know which team's going to win the division. I still would lean Bills because they got Josh Allen. But the Patriots are now legit threats to win the AFC East. No question about it. So 2 teams from the East, New England and Buffalo. Miami and the Jets they're terrible. 3 wins combined between the 2 teams, and both have been, just pitiful so far this year. In the AFC North, I think you will have 1 playoff team. I would expect that to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cincinnati, a disaster. Cleveland is Cleveland. And Baltimore at 2-5. There's still a chance that they could get back into the mix, but I will assume at 2-5 that it's going to be too much to overcome, even with the return of Lamar Jackson, because their defense and the injuries, they just haven't been the type of Baltimore team that we're accustomed to. So I think you get 1 team from the North, most likely Pittsburgh. That puts you at 3 teams. In the AFC South, it's Indianapolis, another team along with New England that I was dead wrong about. I thought the Colts would be terrible. I thought people would laugh at them, and they're one of the best teams in football right now at 7-1. And Daniel Jones is playing like Joe Montana. Did not expect that. Great job by Shane Steichen. And Jonathan Taylor is in the MVP conversation because of his remarkable play, best running back in the NFL right now. So that puts you at 4 teams. And then you get the 3 teams from the AFC West in some combination. Right now, Denver's on top of the division at 6-2. It's unfortunate, but I think they're going to lose at Houston this weekend. But I think the Broncos, Chargers, and Chiefs all make it in, and that puts you at 7. And then we'll see how the seeding shakes out. But there you have it. Broncos, Chargers, Chiefs from the West, Colts from the South, Steelers from the North, both the Patriots and Bills from the East. And those are your 7 teams from the AFC. In the NFC, we look at the NFC East, Philadelphia at 6-2, clearly the best team in the division and probably the best team in the conference. The Cowboys have no defense. Washington has regressed. Their defense has struggled, and they've had injury issues, and Jaden Daniels not 100%. They're only 3-5. And they got to play the Hawks here in a couple of days. And you got the Giants, who just lost Cam Scatterbo. 1 team will get in from the East. That's the Philadelphia Eagles. In the NFC North, you're going to have 2 teams, the Packers and the Lions in some combination. Packers right now 5-1-1, Detroit at 5-2, and the Lions got that big game coming up this weekend against Minnesota. I think the Bears are showing some signs of life, but I don't think they're good enough to get into the postseason. And the Vikings have quarterback question marks, which is not a good thing. So 2 teams from the North, Green Bay and Detroit. From the South, you get 1 team, Tampa Bay. 6-2, they've played terrific football, and Baker Mayfield's playing like an MVP. Carolina's been okay, like not awful. They're 500 right now, 4-4. And then the Falcons and Saints, who just not consistent or good enough. The Saints obviously are terrible at 1-7. And you get 3 teams in from the NFC West. Seattle is going to get in. The Rams are going to get in, and the 49ers are going to get in. Now, there's a possibility that the 49ers might miss just based on attrition. They continue to lose guys at an alarming rate, and at some point that's going to cost you, but I got to give mad props to Kyle Shanahan. He has somehow, some way, in the face of significant injury, they still have like $287 million in fully guaranteed money unavailable, but he's continued to put his team in a position to compete with all those injuries, which is remarkable. He's done a great job. So I don't know who's going to win the division. I picked Seattle before the year. I would lean Hawks, but I think the Rams are legit threats. Both teams are 5-2, and the 49ers at 5-3 will find a way to scratch themselves in. So in the NFC, 3 teams from the West, Seattle, LA Rams, San Francisco 49ers. One team from the South, Tampa Bay. Two teams from the North in Green Bay and Detroit. And one team from the East, Philadelphia. And those are your 7 playoff teams from both conferences. And right now, I really don't, I don't care about the power rankings because we all know that right now, who's playing the best football right now, it really doesn't mean much of anything. It's who gets their act together and starts to peak and play their best football at the right time, heading into the postseason. So there you have it. But love what we're seeing so far, and we got big games coming up this weekend. As I mentioned before, of the games this weekend that I really like, big fan of the Texans over the Broncos. That game's going to be at 10 a.m. on Fox. Broncos always like a 1-point favorite now. Houston's favored by 1.5. But I do like the Texans at home. The Broncos are going to have to change up their defense a bit. They play man more than 50% of the time, more than any team in the NFL. They've got the best pressure rate. But we'll see how Vance Joseph adjusts without the best corner in the game, Pat Surtain, on the field. He's going to miss a few games with that pec strain. And I like the Chiefs over the Bills. I think the Hawks get the job done on the road against the Commanders. And a massive fan. I love this game, but I love the Steelers to get over on the Colts in Pittsburgh this weekend as a 3.5-point dog. And there you have it. There you have it. Chargers, massive favorites on the road against the Titans. The Titans are awful. One of the worst teams in football. One of the absolute worst. So we'll see. Intrigued by the Vikings and Lions. My only question about the Vikings is like, who's going to play quarterback? Is it going to be J.J. McCarthy, who appears to be a bust right now? And then the Bears, the Bengals are so beat up. It's probably a good thing because the Bears right now would be gripping going into Cincy, but injury issues for the Bengals. What a mess they are. And there's some teams in the NFL almost unwatchable because they're a big-time mess. And there you have it. That's what we're looking at in the NFL this weekend. All right. We got big things coming up tonight. World Series game number 6 is underway. The Blazers are going to kick off a homestand. They got some big home games coming up tonight, Denver. And then you're going to get the Lakers and the Thunder to roll into town. A good early season test. This early part of the schedule. That's why I'm so excited about, the team being at 3-2 right now. Because they've got so many big-time games against Western Conference foes. So just continue to play the way you're playing. Attack, attack, attack. And right now, the Blazers, their approach, they're going to catch teams off guard. A lot of those NBA players, they don't want to play that hard. They don't want guys picking them up 94 feet. They don't want to play at a breakneck pace. You can grab a lot of wins in the regular season because teams are just not prepared to deal with what you're trying to throw at them right now. They take the floor, and all of a sudden Portland's up in your grill, getting up and down the floor, and they're pressuring you 94 feet. Nobody wants that. It's like, dude, get off me. You're annoying me. It's kind of like, the movie Rudy, when Rudy's like in with the practice team, the scout team, and he's like just all intense, like he's playing for the championship, and the vets are getting mad at him because like no one goes that hard in practice. That's what the Blazers are right now. They're basically Rudy at practice, getting up in people's grills and annoying them because they're not used to that type of pressure and pace early in the NBA regular season. And I love that. I'm sorry. Sorry that you're not prepared to play hard when you make millions. We'll keep doing it and annoy you. Good. Take advantage of them. If these clowns don't want to play hard, go out there and play hard, beat them at your game, play a better pace, be better defensively, and be intense and frustrate the heck out of them. There's nothing I love more than a guy making millions complaining because of the schedule or the pace or the. I just love it. So good, keep irritating him, and do it more. And that's why I love Tamani Kamara, man. He's like 94 feet. I'm going to get up in your grill and I'm going to talk some junk to you, irritate him, and just keep coming. Don't stop. Gosh, I love that stuff so much. It pumps me up to see them playing like that, and it should pump you up too. It makes me happy. It makes me feel good all over. So there you have it. So, look, for the parents out there that are going trick-or-treating, good luck with that situation. Look out for the adults in the costumes. But most importantly, enjoy the sports weekend, my friends. Chris Burkhardt has got Blazer Game Day coming up right now. Enjoy the game. And I'll be back on Monday with the Rip City Drive as we react to another wild weekend in sports. And by then, we will have a World Series champion. We can talk about it all right? Enjoy your weekend. I love you. Chris Burkhardt's got Blazer Game Day coming up next. Tip-off is at 7, and it's all right here on your home of the best Blazer coverage in town and your only place to get Trailblazer games, Rip City Radio 620. See ya!